Welcome to week number 1 SEC football live. That's right. The full slate is here. Yes, we got a Vanderbilt win last week. And yes, the fans are already clamoring for Mizzou content right out of the gate. But Michael Bratton and Braden Gall here, of course. You can catch us on Twitter live every Tuesday at 1 p.m. Eastern time, Michael. Eastern time for those of us in the Eastern time zone.
Hate it.
I agree with you.
A week. It's awful.
I lived in Eastern time all through college in Knoxville, and I'm glad to be in Central Standard God's time, of course, here on the show. You can catch us on the podcast feed, SEC Football Live. You can catch us on that SEC Podcast YouTube page. You can catch us on the 440 Sports Twitter feed as well, and give us both a follow and interact throughout the course of the week. This is when you can talk to our faces, but you can talk to our fingers all throughout the week. So if you want to join in and hop on and debate and discuss, let's do it. Tons of stuff to get to today on the show. We have a full slate of action, 3 enormous football games that I think are bigger than anybody else in the conference, but every single other game has tons of things to get into in terms of what we are looking for, what we are studying, what we are watching. So I guess we can go. You want to just go right in here? Because I can't wait for Sunday night. I mean, I know Saturday's going to be great, and I know Thursday's going to be great, and I can't wait for those too. But Sunday night seems like such a mammoth football game between LSU and Florida State, and I hope we enjoy it not with an eye on like the college football playoff, but like with an eye on just 2 great programs playing that hate each other, that played a great football game last year, and I hope we get a great football game this year.
Yeah, I got to be honest with you, Braden. I hate playoff talk till about mid-November. Then I'll talk playoff because you're overlooking the greatest sport, the greatest regular season in all of sports, in my opinion, college football. Who in the hell cares where the rankings, what they look like in mid-November? Give me football. And, yeah, Sunday, that'll be a great game. I get it. But I've rewatched the Vanderbilt-Hawaii game 3 times. I'm going to watch Florida-Utah from last year. I'm going to probably watch that tonight just to get geared up for this Thursday night game. I'm just happy we're not talking documentaries. We're not talking hot takes. We're not talking lists. We're actually talking football. And, man, I couldn't be more excited about it.
I am also done with listicles. I don't need any more listicles in my life, that's for sure. You said documentaries. I assume you're talking about the things that were on Netflix, because I would not call those documentaries.
Whatever the hell those were.
I would call that paid for content by some agents and some PR companies. But either way, so let's talk actual matchup then, because, and all of you guys, if you want to help steer the conversation, please jump into the comments. We do appreciate you guys. But one of the things I agree. I think the message for Florida State and LSU is not to worry about what it means about their resume at the end of the season, is to just enjoy for 3.5, maybe 4 hours, 2 great quarterbacks, 2 great programs, great helmet game. Sure, I wish it was in Baton Rouge or in Tallahassee, but it's not. It's at some stupid neutral site in Orlando, but whatever. The fans are going to be great, and it should be a bona fide superstar matchup at almost every position. And I want to start with so certainly Maason Smith being out is a big factor here for LSU's front 7, which is a big part of the matchup within the game. Would you say that the defensive backs, the secondary, is the biggest weakness for LSU going into the season? I mean, they don't have a ton of weaknesses, but would that be the one area that you are concerned about?
Well, that and special teams, just because they were so god-awful on special teams last year. Thankfully, they fired the special teams coordinator, and they got the janitor up there, John Jancic, leading the charge on special teams. So, yeah, but, I mean, they addressed via the transfer portal. So, I don't know if it's a question mark or concern. It's a question mark for sure. How all these new pieces are going to fit together in Matt House's system. But they nailed the transfer portal last year, and I'm confident that they did it again down there in Baton Rouge.
I don't think we'll know until we see him against Jordan Travis, who
I'm confident.
I know you are. I know you are. I'm confident in Brian Kelly and LSU being great potentially. But Jordan Travis is, for those that don't know and don't watch Florida State football, which I don't know why you wouldn't. They're a heck of a football team. And I think Jordan Travis is one of the best deep ball throwers in the entire country. They have NFL receivers on the outside who are 6'5", 6'6". They are going to go down the field, and they're going to put LSU defensive backs into pressure single coverage situations. And if they hold up, then I think you're going to learn that LSU is national championship caliber. because there's not the point of this to me, Michael, is that there's not many programs in America that are going to throw as many weapons at that defense as Florida State will. So if they win and they win easily, to me, that shows that they are national championship caliber, like that they have that kind of upside this year. If they struggle in those situations, it doesn't mean they're bad. It means Florida State is that good. Does that make sense?
I'm glad you went there, Braden, because I was prepping. I told you before, I don't know anything about damn Florida State, but I went back and studied up a little bit. I didn't realize they had a week 0 game last year. So they had a game before that LSU game. I didn't even know that. So they were a little bit more prepared. And they lost to Wake Forest. Oh, man, mighty Wake Forest. They lost to NC State. They lost to Clemson. And then they went on this incredible run. Hottest team in the country, preseason top 10. Look at these juggernauts they beat, Braden. Georgia Tech, oh, my God. That was a home game. Miami, which was god-awful last year. I'm looking at Miami was 5-7. Yeah, good job. You beat them. Syracuse, aren't they? They're about a loss away from firing their coach. They beat Louisiana, which is where Billy Napier left from and took all the best players, took them to Florida. And then they beat the Gators, which the Gators were awful by the end of last season. And Anthony Richardson nearly single-handedly beat them. And, oh, yeah, they beat Oklahoma, which was a losing record. They beat them in a bowl game. And we're all sitting here hyping up Florida State as this national championship contender. ACC picked, to win that conference. Get the hell out of here. I don't even think this is going to be a ball game, Braden. I think LSU is going to beat the shit out of them.
Florida State outright with the win for me on Sunday night. Here's the thing. You can't sit here and tell me that you don't know anything about any of these teams, that you don't watch any of them, and then make a judgment about how good they are.
I did the research. They're awful. Come on, get the hell out of here.
Wake Forest is one of the best Wake Forest programs that in the history of Wake Forest football. I'm not going to go down the schedule. The point is that Florida State did what you want to see a team do to build for next year, which is go on a hot streak down the stretch, regardless of who you play. They dominated people down the stretch. They lost to 3 or 4 good teams, including on the last play of the game. They won on the last play of the game to LSU. So we already saw them basically evenly matched. Both teams should be better this year. And the game's now going to have maybe more Florida State fans in the stands. So I think the key is, can you pressure Jordan Travis off his mark? If you can get Jordan Travis off his mark with Harold Perkins and with some of those other guys on the front 7 for LSU without Maason Smith, that is where I think they can win the game and just dominate the line of scrimmage. And if they do that, again, if the defensive backs hold up and they pressure the quarterback, I'm not really, I want to see maybe a more traditional running game from LSU. I don't want to see Jaden Daniels with like the most attempts and the most yards, but you also don't want to take that away from him either. So I just think it's a great football game. It's a great matchup. Talent-wise, LSU is not that superior. The coaching matchup, Brian Kelly gets a slight edge, but it's not by much. It's just a really great football game with 2 Southern powerhouses that have aspirations to win the whole fucking thing. That's great. That's just great for Sunday night. So
I don't get the Mike Norvell hype. I mean,
he's just won everywhere he's been. Like
Memphis, he's not really won much at Florida State. I was looking up I was reading up about them. They're 15-6 in their last, and that was like a good stat. And I'm like, Jesus, you get fired in the SEC, you're going 15-6.
Brian Kelly almost lost 6 games last year.
No, he didn't.
They lost 4 times, dude.
This is the SEC, man. If Mike Norvell was in here, his record would be 6-15.
This is not an anti or pro SEC thing. This is just Florida State LSU. Let's enjoy it for what it is. It's 2 top 10 teams, 2 very big brands that I can't. First of all, I also hope this is why I wish it was on a college campus, because I think the tailgate would just be just insane. Like Florida State is bonkers crazy tailgates, and LSU is the best of all time. So you put them into one parking lot in freaking Orlando, Florida, God knows what's going to happen in that parking lot. So
thank you, Tim. Beating Bama erases 2 losses. So really they only had 2.
Hey, I'm just saying the facts here, man. Just saying the facts. 9-4 last year. And I like the LSU.
No,
team.
10-4.
Right? Oh, my apologies. Well, I don't think they can play 14 games, can they? That's true. They lost to Georgia.
They played the SEC championship.
Is there anything else within the game that you are interested to watch, X's and O's wise, that you think will teach us something about LSU for the rest of the year? Or is it just let's enjoy the game?
What they do with Harold Perkins, because there's a lot of talk about maybe not utilizing him as just like the water boy, see the ball, get the ball. putting him more in the middle of the defense. So I'm kind of curious, and some people are wondering why the hell they do that. But I think having your best player have the ability to do more things in the defense is a good thing, just because we didn't see him do it last year. So I'll have a keen eye on what or how they utilize Perkins in this football game, particularly next to Spites, who was an all Pac-12 performer next to him. I think that's kind of interesting. I want to see Mekhi Wingo, see how he steps up without Maason Smith next to him. And, some of these transfers, we already mentioned the defensive backs, but LSU also loaded up with edge players at the transfers. A guy from Texas, I'm not going to butcher his name, but they added several of those guys. So to your point, they need to get to the quarterback. I want to see if they're able to do it with, you have to imagine Florida State's focus is going to be on Harold Perkins.
Yeah, 100%. And I think Maason Smith in the game might actually be why I would take LSU, I think, if Maason Smith was playing, just because I think he takes up all the space and gives Perkins all kinds of free run. But you're right. Brian Kelly early on in the offseason was like, no, we're going to move him into the middle. We're going to play him a little bit more into a more traditional middle linebacker role. And then you sort of heard rumors out of camp that he was still coming off the edge. They were using him in packages. So I agree. How they use him is going to be fascinating. And then I think if Jaden Daniels shows us sort of like mid-season to late season Daniels, where he is willing to throw the football and release it in rhythm and release it on time, I think that's going to be interesting. Keep an eye on Jared Verse, top 10 potential NFL pick for the Seminoles coming off the edge. So just great football matchups within the matchup across the board on Sunday night. Listen, I would take the Noles outright, but that's because I'm picking them to make the playoff and be like number 2 in the nation. So I'm buying the hype, and you can next week, if I'm wrong, I'll sit here and be accounted for. I got no problems with that. I'm wrong all the time. Just ask my wife. Okay. South Carolina, North Carolina is I think from a trajectory of the season standpoint, could you argue that for South Carolina that this is the biggest game of the weekend? From a how does this affect the trajectory of the season for the teams? Like if Florida loses, does it really change the trajectory of their season? Maybe not. Like all the other games are kind of blowouts, but like I think if South Carolina plays really well, or if South Carolina plays really poorly, I think this football game changes the trajectory of their season more than any other game in week 1.
Yeah, perhaps. A lot of pressure, a lot on the line. I think for both these teams, talking to Stephen Lassen, I think North Carolina needs to win pretty bad too. So, College game day, nationally broadcast. And we were talking about this with cousin Shane, but just, so much pressure that what happens to South Carolina, not just this game, but the first 5 games of the season? What if Rattler struggles and South Carolina has, what if they're like, say, 2-3 or, God forbid, 1-4? I don't think anybody's going to pay attention to anything they do the rest of the season. And, I mean, they could win out the rest of the way, but I think they'll be written off. So, to your point, there's a lot on the line. Even though it's not a conference game, they need to get the momentum. They need to get it quick, and that is something that they have really struggled to do. I know it's only been 2 years, but they have struggled in the Shane Beamer era, playing some inferior opponents to start strong. They must do it in this one, because if they lose this game, I don't know. I mean, it to me, it'll feel like a lot of the air's coming out of that hype.
That's the trajectory thing. Also because of how the matchup sets up, right? Like South Carolina is sort of their weaknesses are in the trenches on the offensive line, the defensive line. That you can avoid some of that against the North Carolina team that doesn't play any defense. Now they got some really good linebackers, like all conference level linebackers, but like they don't play a lot of defense at all. And so it does set up for Spencer Rattler with a new coordinator, with some nice weapons on the outside to like build some confidence and show us that what you did at the end of last season wasn't just a momentary glimpse of brilliance. Like show us that what you did last season is carried over. And because again, if you cannot score against North Carolina, you are not going to score against SEC defenses. So they have to score points. And on the other side, of course, God help anyone trying to stop Drake May. That dude could be the number 1 overall pick. He's got a new offensive system that he actually is much happier with, I've been told, than the previous system. And they're going to sling it, dude. This is like a circus. This whole game is like a wild circus. Again, I wish it was in Columbia or Chapel Hill, but hey, we get the matchup either way, I guess. It's better than not having the game, I guess.
What happens if South Carolina struggles against this defense? And I mean, I know all the fans are fired up about Dow Loggins because he's great in a press conference and all that, but I mean, hell, they were probably fired up about Marcus Satterfield till they saw him coach a game. You know what I mean? So I don't know. I mean, will they? Certainly, they won't be out on him after one game, but it'll be troubling if the first month of the season they struggle mightily on offense. And here, I think then we'll start to question whether Shane Beamer knows how to hire an offensive coordinator or not.
I mean, you're right. That's what the conversation will be. There you go. South Carolina equals overrated, which also you would have said heading into each of the last two seasons. And despite slow starts, South Carolina has finished well above their preseason expectations. So can he do it a third straight time and still doing it on the back of just knowing how to manage a game, which he does better than almost anybody else? The whole Beamer ball special teams thing, they're going to be better than almost anybody they play against in that situation. To me, this is still about, like, so much of this weekend is about quarterbacks. So much of the first couple of weeks is about quarterbacks. And when you play a rival team with the defense that's terrible, and you're in your 5th or 6th or 14th year as a quarterback, 5-star previous Heisman Trophy caliber guy who just torched Tennessee, Clemson, and Vanderbilt to end the year, and you feel like you should be the guy, like, this is a no-brainer. You have to perform in this situation. And
right. Is it
the pressure's
amplified?
There.
Amplified because it's game day, because it's Saturday night, week 1, nationally televised. I mean,
maybe
all sports fans, all college fans are going to be watching this game as long as it's not conflicting with their team. I don't know. So, I mean, it could be great. If they beat the hell out of North Carolina, I mean, that'll be great. I don't care if they lose by 1 point or they lose by 40. It's going to be awful for them if they lose it, I feel like.
Yeah, I agree. I don't. Here's the thing: like, I don't have high expectations for the defense to make a bunch of plays against North Carolina. So I think they have house money on that side of the ball. If they make some plays and have a couple of nice stops, and all of a sudden North and Drake May is struggling for a chunk of time, that's house money. If you're South Carolina, you're saying, hell, we might be better than we think, because this is as good an offense as you're going to face anywhere in the country. But this is exclusively about Spencer Rattler and Dow Loggins. That is what this is about. You should put up 35, 38, 41 points. Truly. Like, the over-under, I think, is 64.5. Like, that's basically telling you 35-30 is the score, right? So, I don't know. I think this is and again, he can answer all kinds of questions. He goes out there and slings it around, and they score, and the offense looks free and loose like it did against Tennessee, and he's down the field taking shots like it was. Then all of a sudden, okay, all right, let's see what you can do against Mississippi State, against Georgia, and against Tennessee, against Texas A&M, and against Clemson. Like, it's a nasty schedule for South Carolina. So,
what's the record if Spencer Rattler is a Heisman finalist? And I realize that's a leap, but people are probably tired of hearing him in Heisman hype. But let's just say it happens.
Does he have to beat Georgia for that to be the case, or can he do it on the back of statistical production?
He's probably got to beat Georgia.
Yeah, I would think he has to probably beat Georgia to do that. In which case, they are probably 9-3, 10-2, at least. Which means you definitely are not. Which means you're definitely not losing to North Carolina. I mean, we've seen quarterbacks win the Heisman on like 9. I mean, Tebow won the Heisman on like a 3 or 4 loss team. Robert Griffin won the Heisman on a 3 or 4 loss team. Lamar Jackson won the Heisman on a 3 or 4 loss team. We've seen it. So I think that's right, by the way. Kyle says so much stock put into South Carolina's last 2 games and not their first 10, which I have done, and South Carolina fans hate me for it. I'm sorry. That's when Satterfield simplified the offense. And we'll see if Loggins does that again. Again, I think all the pressure here is on Rattler, and he could absolutely pass with flying colors. And we could be talking next week on the show about how South Carolina's offense has taken another step, and Rattler's finally found himself, and last year wasn't a fluke, and that could be the story. Could also be the other way. So we shall see. All right, Florida and Utah. Thursday night. Can't wait for this one. I think the point spread was 10. I think as high as 11 at one point. Then it was down to 5 last week. If you're betting on Utah, I hope you grab the 5. If you're betting on Florida, I hope you grab the 11. now it's at like 6.5. So it's starting to go back up again. the All-American tight end for Utah, Brent Keithy's not going to play probably. We're not sure. Cam Rising is coming off the ACL, their star quarterback. Probably not going to play. I would assume Graham Mertz debut, Billy Napier. They beat this team last year at home with Richardson doing supernatural things. This is a really hard ask. I know you've picked Florida to win this game outright, but this is a really big ask to go on the road in elevation in the loudest stadium in the Pac-12. This is as close as Pac-12 football can possibly get to SEC football, which is 105% capacity of stadium every game. It's the loudest stadium in the Pac-12. They're the best defensive and offensive lines in the Pac-12.
It's louder than Oregon?
I think Oregon and Utah are the top two, clearly, with maybe Washington's like number 3.
Oregon's the loudest stadium I've ever been in.
What game did you get to go to?
They beat Tennessee by like 60.
Oh,
it was pretty damn loud.
I forgot about that. Adrian Peterson played for Oklahoma and was there in the tunnel, and he said he thought it was an earthquake, that it was the loudest stadium he's ever been in. Travis says I don't think Florida has the defensive line to hold Utah's running. This to me, if Utah's playing its third string quarterback, Florida could go out there and do something crazy. But I think the problem for Florida is the defensive front. That's my issue. I think they underestimate how good Florida's offense is. And I don't mean great. I just mean they were the number 4 offense in the conference last year. They got a couple of nice weapons. I really like the freshman, Andy Neal, the receiver. They got Pearsall. They got 2 good running backs. Like, they've got some pieces on offense if Mertz doesn't fuck it up. So I'm curious what the defense looks like. And Utah has made a living chewing up weak defensive fronts over the last 15 years.
Well, you know what's interesting about that, Brayton? I was reading an article, shout out to Will Miles, Read and Reaction, and I had no clue about this, but he did a deep dive on, yes, Utah was borderline elite in allowing plays over 10 yards or fewest plays under 10 yards, but they were, I think, 123rd in the country in 40 yards or more plays allowed. So, for as strange as that is to say, I mean, they're good at keeping things in front of them, I guess, but they are they give up explosive plays, and he used many examples in the Penn State game. I think Florida had some big plays against them last year, so I think Florida's got the athletes to kind of expose them down the field. I don't know if Graham Mertz can get it done, but
I was going to ask, do they have the quarterback?
That's the true question mark. But so that's something to keep your eye on. I mean, if going up against the explosive Eugene Wilson's another 5-star freshman receiver that Florida's got this year. And to my understanding, Utah's going to be starting a true freshman left tackle, which that doesn't sound good going up against Florida Gators. So I don't know. And they're down on their third string quarterback.
Yeah, there's a lot of you guys in the comments. Go Hogs! You got RCC. All y'all saying Utah by multiple scores. I mean,
well, he's a Florida fan. He knows our picks are horrible. So
okay,
I may just give him a break here.
All right, there you go. I agree with you. Now I'd love to know on those plays of 40 yards and more, the big X plays that coaches focus on. I'd be curious because you're playing in the same conference with the best quarterbacks right now in college football with Caleb Williams, Michael Penix. Like, these teams go down the field a lot, so there's a lot of opportunity to give up those plays potentially. So, I don't know. It's an interesting. I find this to be utterly fascinating because we don't really know what Billy Napier's team is going to be in year 2. I'm of the belief that he's building it the right way. That it's unusual to ask Florida to be patient. That's normally not what you expect from Florida. But I think the cupboard was super bare. I think the infrastructure wasn't there, and he's building it all. And I think it's a really, really shitty draw for Billy Napier to have to play Utah of all teams in the first 2 games of the season in his first 2 seasons. I just think that's unlucky. Like any other Florida, go back. We should do this exercise. Go back and look at Jim McElwain's first 2 games of the season and Will Muschamp's first 2 games and Ron Zook's first 2 games. I bet you he's playing Slappy State and Sisters of the Poor every time. So playing Utah
McElwain,
sucks.
I think he played Michigan at least once, right?
Did he really?
That. Yeah,
that's a good pull by you, by the way. If you pull that,
that was a hardball team too.
Yeah. So I'm taking Utah, but I think it's
What is
mostly
the name
about
of this show? Is it I Hate SEC Live? What the hell are we doing here? We're picking
okay.
every team but the SEC?
Look, I don't. Here's the thing. No, I took South Carolina to win. Taking South Carolina to win. Look, if you want me to blow smoke up your ass, go listen to another show. I'm going to talk about football. I'm going to talk about. First of all, has anyone ever enjoyed smoke up their ass?
I know quite a few people. Yeah, for sure.
Really, you know quite a few people that enjoy the feeling, the sensation of plumes of smoke flying up their
Have you
ass.
seen these damn Bulldogs? Just because some idiots on ESPN picked Alabama to win, and my God, they're all over me for that. I mean, I got nothing to do with that.
Well, it is your you've been driving the narrative of how good Alabama's going to be all summer. So
Yeah, and the point being is Georgia's dominant over them. Yet, I don't know. I mean, yes, all the smoke, please.
I just think we are capable as sports fans of understanding objective analysis. And if I think your team's going to win, I'm going to tell you I think your team's going to win. And if I think your team's going to lose, I'm going to tell you I think your team's going to lose. Doesn't mean I'm right. I'm wrong all the time. But I don't listen to shit that's not like authentic opinions. Like I'm not going to listen to that. I want somebody to tell me what they really think. And I think Utah's a better football team right now. I don't know, the 2-time defending champions than a team that right now we're not sure if they get to a bowl game, and they're at home. I don't know.
How much of that is the quarterback and the elite tight ends? I mean, it doesn't seem like they're going to have any of that for this game.
Well, they didn't have Keithy most of the last year, so they just churn out.
They had him against Florida though, right?
So they did it early in the game, and he went off. I think,
and they still lost.
I think Utah was inside the 2-yard line about 5 times last year and should have won the game. But either way,
to one of them tight ends, I guess. I don't know.
Maybe they should have. Maybe they should have, Mike. All right, so you're picking Florida to win outright. What can we wager? Because I'm just going to go ahead and gamble on this with you.
Oh yeah, no, I think for sure Florida's going to win that game.
Cool. Thank you, Todd. I appreciate that. God, if you want to listen to state-run propaganda, go listen to some other fucking show. All right. That's not what we do. We talk college ball. Here. Now, this is going to be real easy because I'm picking SEC teams every other game the rest of the show. And so it's Georgia? Not smoke. It's not smoke. I don't know. Is that Mercer or Southeast Louisiana? Who's playing Georgia this week?
UT Martin.
UT Martin, I know. All right, let's bounce back and forth here with things that you want to see, because those are kind of the 3 games that are actually competitive, inside 10-point spreads. That's the real action, but there's so much other drama that's going to take place across the conference this weekend, things that you just are excited to see. So we'll bounce back and forth. I want you to tell me what you're watching. You can pick any game you want. If you guys have questions, you guys want us to comment on something that you guys want to talk about, please jump into the comments and we will go that direction. So I'll give you first crack at this. Outside of those big 3, what is the thing you want to see the most in week number 1 in the SEC?
Well, it's pretty interesting. So I had Steven Lasson, who
that's 2 mentions. That's above the contract. It's above the contract.
Hey, he's just one of the sharpest guys out there. But he put Southeast Louisiana at Mississippi State as right up there, right below these 3 as a game to keep your eye on. Not that he thinks Mississippi State will lose, but just uncertain about them. And I kind of echo those sentiments because those fans are so damn high on Zach Arnett and Will Rogers and company. And not to say that I'm down on them, but they did win 9 games, and the expectation seems to be, 7 minimum, 8 wins. And we won't learn if they're that good this game, but I just want to see this new offense. I want to see the defense, what it looks like with new faces in the secondary. And really, I really want to see Mike Wright, because it sounds like these coaches are giddy down there on what he brings to the Mississippi State offense. So just a lot of questions about Mississippi State that we won't have answers to until probably not a couple of weeks down the road. But this is the first opportunity. I'm very fascinated by Mississippi State and particularly the offense.
I want to see. I'm with you on the Mike Wright thing, and certainly you probably get some more of that against Southeast Louisiana than you would against LSU, let's say, or even South Carolina in a couple of weeks. I want to see just the general layout of the offense, like how and in this kind of game, again, it's hard because you probably do run the ball more in this type of situation. And we just don't know what the balance is going to look like, what the system's going to look like. And frankly, what I want to know is how are they going to run the ball? Like, are they trying to run it out of air raid situations because that's what Will Rogers is so comfortable in? I know he's a football junkie and he's a nerd and he's studying everything and he knows all the words and he knows all the calls and like he's like, he lives and dies this stuff, which I appreciate and love about him. But how are they going to run the football? They're not going to do it with fullbacks and multiple tight end sets and 12 personnel. Like, that's not what they're going to do. So how do you add balance to that offense, I think, is what I'm most interested in seeing. Do we learn that exclusively in this game? Maybe not. I do think you're right. You could see a lot of Mike Wright, no pun intended, of course, in this game. So I think that's interesting. But I don't know how much we learn about Mississippi State. But the run-pass balance is worth keeping an eye on. I want to go to Tennessee because I'm going to be there. I'm taking the wife. Got the friends coming. Got the sister-in-law coming. Got everybody's going. Tailgates early. So if you're at Nissan Stadium, which is a dumpy professional stadium, if you're coming to the game, come find us. Shoot me a tweet at Braden Gall. We'll be walking around the parking lot in barely any clothing because it'll be hot as hell. Drinking cold beer. So come say hello. But the thing I want to watch here is the margins for Joe Milton. It's not that they're going to lose. It's not that they're going to struggle. I think the offense is going to. They might have a couple of interesting drives where like the Virginia defense gives them some trouble. But like I'm saying like a couple of punts, maybe 2 all game. They're going to score their 35. They're going to score their 42. In fact, I would lay the 28. One of my few bets this week is Tennessee minus the 28. To me, this is about not the wide open receivers for Tennessee, because there's going to be a handful of wide open receivers for Tennessee, and Milton has to connect on those throws. But what I want to see is the tough throw. I want to see the 12-yard in route where he's got to go over a linebacker and underneath the safety and really make it an accurate throw. Can he take a little heat off of it? Like, I want to see the difficult throws. There's not going to be a lot of them in the game because I think they're going to destroy Virginia. But I do think sort of watching those tricky throws for Joe Milton is going to be interesting. And, I think the defense is going to play really well. I think this is a blowout. It's a beer game, as we call it. And so it's more about sort of watching the finely tuned margins for Joe Milton more than anything else for Tennessee, in my opinion.
That's interesting. I mean, that sounds good, Braden. But offensive line, question mark. And one of their better offensive linemen, Cooper Mays, doesn't sound like he's going to play. They got questions at left guard and right tackle, too. So from what I hear, Virginia's got, I wouldn't call them a stingy defense, but a decent ACC defense. So I don't think they're completely shut down Tennessee by any means, but I think there could be some drives here that, I don't know, that they kind of stifle Tennessee because of the line of scrimmage. So I'll be having a key eye on Tennessee's offensive line. And again, like I said, I'm not sitting here predicting them to get upset or anything, but I'm a little worried that they may not cover the spread because I don't think they're going to have quite the offensive production that you are indicating there.
I think there are a couple of stops in the first and second half, which happens naturally in week 1, which happens naturally for an offensive line missing its center, happens naturally for a new quarterback. Those kind of things happen. Technically a new coordinator, but really. I think those things happen pretty naturally. The question is how fast do you work your way out of it? And I would get I think Virginia's in pretty deep shit this year. Like this is not a good Virginia team. There's been some good Virginia teams in the past. This is not one of them. And I think, sure, they might get a couple of stops early. I'm with you. Let's watch the offensive line. But I think the scheme is too good. They're going to have – I think the receiving core is too good. Like, they will not be able to run with the 4-headed monster out on the outside with those 2 receivers split way out on either side. Like, they're not going to stop those guys in space. So the question is, does Joe find the open guys? And does Joe Milton hit the guys on the 3rd and 8 throw? Because if you're telling me the defense is going to stop them occasionally, that puts them into 3rd and 6, 3rd and 7, 3rd and 9, and that's where Joe Milton's going to have to make a more difficult throw, in theory.
Mm-hmm.
And let's see if he can make those throws. Those are the throws that I have questions. I don't have questions about Joe Milton producing 35 points and making good throws to easy open receivers. It's about the tough throws that I have questions about with Joe Milton. So 28 and a half. There you go.
If this game was in Neyland, I would agree with you. I just hate it's in Nashville. They need to stop doing these. I know you're going to be there, but that's stupid.
My children, my two little girls like the fact that the game's in Nashville. The stadium sucks, frankly, but you also and Josh Heupel knows this. It's going to be it'll be mostly orange. It'll be 90% Tennessee fans, so it'll feel like Neyland from a crowd standpoint. But this is about recruiting the mid-state. This is about building the Tennessee brand in the mid-state. That's what this is about from a recruiting standpoint, because there's a lot more talent in this area than there was 20 years ago. Okay, what do you got?
You think playing in Nissan Stadium really does that?
I think it allows for fans and parents of recruits and high school players in the area to just come see a game when they, driving 3.5 hours is tougher 3 hours is tougher for people. Like, especially if you're doing unofficial stuff, we have to pay your own way. So it is what it is. Fireball says, I like Nissan Stadium. I'd like to know what you like about it. Like, this is why we're spending $2 billion on a new one.
Hell, and they play in Nashville every other year. So I don't know. I just feel there's only 7 to 8 home games a year, and you're robbing this great fan base of one of them. And they're really just doing it for money. I mean, because they get more money out of it.
Yeah.
I just think it's wrong. But
the neutral site games are going to happen no matter what. Unfortunately, now I will say some athletic directors are pushing back on that. Like Greg Byrne at Alabama is pushing back on that. Mm-hmm. I think what's interesting is, they've only done it twice in 6 or 7 years. Like if you're counting bowl games, that's different. But because they've played in the Music City Bowl,
doing it next year too, though?
3 or 4
Charlotte?
times. Well, Charlotte's, again, that's about paycheck and recruiting. Like you need to recruit North Carolina like that, and you want to get your brand out there, and you want to take a paycheck. I'm not saying I like it, but it's why there's reasons you do it for a football program. All right, what do you got? What's up next? What you got? What are you watching?
Another one, probably running down my list here, UMass at Auburn. I thought UMass was, somewhat impressive. There was only about 5 games week 0, but they were among the impressive of the 5. And just, obviously all the change at Auburn with Hugh Freeze and a new staff and essentially an entire new player personnel on offense across the board, minus Jarquez Hunter. So what does this Auburn offense look like? Do they come out fired up? The spread in that one that's
huge.
Hit a little bit. It was I'm looking at
35 right now.
35. Yeah, it was 40 till UMass played the other day. So it's dipped slightly. And apparently UMass
on Auburn.
UMass is 9-1 against the spread in their last 10 against SEC opponents, including last year against A&M. They won against the spread. So that's an interesting one to me, UMass at Auburn.
Well, Hugh Freeze, welcome back to the SEC is that's all the headline you need to tune in for that one. How does Peyton Thorne fit inside the offense that we know probably Robbie Ashford runs better? I think is interesting. I think you're right. The wholesale, it's like a hockey line change along the offensive line, and with the port, it's like all these guys out and all these new guys in, and it's just they're just trying to. That's what you do though. And I was talking to somebody around Auburn that said, "Look, this is the reason we did this is because they're more proven commodities in the portal than there are on the recruiting trail. Why would we not go get these guys out of the portal?" I'm like, okay, fine, that makes sense. So it'll be interesting to see the offense, but we need to see week 2, week 3, week 4 against A&M is coming up for both these guys, and I'll package Texas A&M into this conversation. Connor Wigman named the starter. I assume we're going to see Max Johnson in the first game as well, just because it's a blowout. But I think what does the offense look like in terms of tempo? This is exclusively for me about tempo and the offensive line. How does Texas A&M look in terms of the pace of things? How are they playing? How confident are they? Connor Wigman's development from last year, Bobby Petrino's influence. Does Jimbo, how long does Jimbo keep his hands off the wheel, et cetera, et cetera? Same story we've talked about all summer. But just want to see Connor Wigman in action. I thought he had a pretty solid debut in a really difficult situation last year. 7 touchdowns, no interceptions as a true freshman on a team that was flailing about. I don't know. I think that was a pretty decent performance by him. So now that you've got a real elite offensive coordinator, what does it look like? And to me, it's all about pace and tempo and the offensive line for Texas A&M. I'd package that the same reason I'm watching Auburn is the same reason I'm watching A&M. It's just, what does the offense look like?
I realize worst case scenario is losing a game like that and they're not going to lose, but second worst case scenario, what if they need Max Johnson to win them the game in the fourth quarter? I mean, and here we go again. You know
what? So maybe it's not even like losing the game. What if it's like 17-3? Like they're winning 17-3 in the third quarter, like midway through the third, and Jimbo's like, I got to get my sticky fingers up back into the game here. And then he puts Max Johnson in, and they just like start throwing it all around. Like, is that an indictment on Connor Wigman, or is that just Jimbo? This is the story every single game for Texas A&M.
I almost want to see it just for the reaction, because most of us are all buying back into A&M, which is with like a curse that it won't happen. You know what?
All right, then I'll go Bama here. I'll jump on the Bama train and say, look, not naming a starter, whatever, dude. It is what it is, Nick. If you want to do that, fine. You could just put or on the depth chart, like Milroe or Simpson stupid. Or Buckner. Like coaches do this shit all the time. You could do the ors on there. I think all three of them are going to play. I think Middle Tennessee is not worthy enough to stop any of the three of them. I think Jalen Milroe's the best guy. Am I crazy for thinking that? I think eventually Ty Simpson's going to be better and he's going to threaten down the field more. I don't know if we see that this year. I think they want to line up and chew people up like they used to in 2017 and 2012, and I don't know if that's good enough to beat Georgia, but it's probably good enough to beat most everybody else. So, what does the offense look like with Milroe? Again, a lot of the same things here. What does the offense look like? What does the offense look like? But it's so many questions at quarterback and offense in the SEC this year.
I just can't wait for his first 3 turnover game against a conference opponent.
Against Texas.
Going to be great. We had Texas. I count them as conference opponent, but man, that's going to be beautiful to see Nick Saban going irate on the sideline, and he doesn't have Pete Golding and Bill O'Brien to blame this year. He'll find a new excuse this fall, but that's I think it's more important, this offensive line, because I think that's where all these people are picking Alabama to win the SEC, win the national championship. They're just buying in for, whatever the message is coming from, the state media down there in Tuscaloosa, that the offensive line is going to be awesome, even though they haven't been for a couple of years. They've struggled to pick up, critical first downs in situations on the goal line and such, and third and short, fourth and short. They've not been getting that push that we're used to seeing. So I guess they automatically found that over the offseason. We won't find that out against MTSU, but we'll find it fairly early in the season. But that is something to monitor. I think if the offensive line is not elite, I don't know. All these Alabama predictions are going to be way, way wrong.
Big Blue 420. We'll get to you guys. I've got a lot of there's a lot to watch, I think, for Kentucky. Go Hog says Nick seems oddly happy in his interviews. That has been strange. He has been awfully happy in this whole offseason, or at least in the last couple of weeks. Alabama, the most overrated team in the top 25. That's interesting, considering there's always a couple that go from number 8 to like a losing record, and I'm pretty sure that ain't going to be Bama this year. So
it could be
losing record, huh? All right.
I said it could be
against the spread. So Big Blue 420, what do you want to see in Kentucky? So let me ask you, there's X's and O's stuff that I'm interested in seeing. I want to see Devin Leary. I want to see the offensive line. I want to see the tempo, because and the spread and how much they're modernizing with bringing Liam Cohen back. But I'm going to step back from that for a second for Kentucky, and I want to see what you think about something. Kentucky, even though they've had some 10-win seasons and some really good football teams relative to even Kentucky's success over the last 5 or 6 years, it feels like lately that they have not dominated the inferior non-conference opponent the way you want them to. Like, wasn't it UTC that gave them a little bit of trouble a couple years ago? They've kind of had these games where they like dick around with their food. You know what I mean? And like, I want to see Kentucky like, with Devin Leary, with Liam Cohen, with all those weapons, and with whatever twists they're bringing with Ray Davis, I want to see them make an impactful, forceful statement and say, we are better than playing with our food at the table. Like, I want to see them beat the shit out of Ball State.
Yeah, I don't know if that's in their DNA, though, because I know I've been hyping up Devin Leary, hyping up these receivers. I love that they brought back Liam Cohen, but they're in their DNA. Who Stoops wants them to be is just, grounded out, eat the clock, tough nose, play defense, and that's not going to lead to a lot of huge beatdowns. I don't feel like, and
I
that
agree.
I agree. That's been particularly the problem last year was just they didn't have the offensive line to where they could do that. I mean, it was pathetic. They were getting down inside the 5-yard line. They were throwing consecutively because they knew they couldn't. And I'm not talking against SEC teams. I'm talking against, some of these lesser, I can't remember all the teams they put, Ball State and teams of that nature. They couldn't run on those teams, and it was pathetic. So this game's all about that. How does the offensive line look after shifting much of the personnel to different positions back to their more natural positions, bringing in some transfers to shore up at left tackle and maybe right tackle? How does the Kentucky offensive line look? Because I think the hopes of the season kind of hinge on them, because I think every other quantity is a known quantity and could be a special season, but it's kind of all dictated on that offensive line.
It's completely based on the offensive line. I agree. I think it was a 31-23 game last year against Northern Illinois. So it's that kind of thing. And Northern Illinois wasn't terrible last year, but and I'm not even suggesting that the game was as close as the score indicates, right? Like sometimes a team backdoors its way to a 1-score game and okay, fine. But even, and I agree with you, that's not the way Kentucky is built structurally. Like that's not who they are, but that's what they need to be on offense. And the offensive line is absolutely atrocious. Connor Wigman will be thrown into Heisman talk after the New Mexico.
That's like Cousin Shane thinks Judkins they're going to pad his stats against Mercer, and I'm like,
I would be shocked if he touched the ball more. Right, I'd be shocked if Judkins touches the ball more than 12 times.
Connor Wigman will be thrust into the Heisman conversation if they beat Bama. That's where that comes from, not New Mexico. Judkins, same thing. They beat Bama or LSU. That's how you get there, not Mercer. He could throw for 10 touchdowns against New Mexico. Yeah. That'll be a stat people will throw out that no one will give a shit about that.
Yeah, and I'm picking officially Texas A&M to beat Alabama. This is my third show in a row. I'm saying it. A&M will beat Alabama. The question is, do they get up for anybody else on their schedule? Which they have a drug for that, A&M. If you need help getting it up, okay. All right.
Week 1 Heisman winner.
Tim, I love you, buddy. Good to talk to you. Good to hear from you, Tim. Thanks for hanging out. Okay, so what else we got here? I want to quickly Vanderbilt 1-0. I want to point this out real fast. If they win against Alabama A&M, which they should, they will be 4-1 in their last 5 games and 7-7 overall since the start of last season. I don't care who it was against, who they've beaten, who they didn't beat, what the score of the games were. I don't care that you did not push Hawaii around like I expected you to. AJ Swan looked okay. The receivers played well. By and large, you did not dominate that game the way I would want to. Although it was a 3-touchdown game in the fourth quarter, Hawaii made a couple of late pushes there. There's still lots of questions about Vanderbilt, but 3 years ago, when they had a 22-game SEC losing streak, if I would have told you they would be 7-7 over a 14-game span in Clark Lee's second and beginning of third year, I think every single Vanderbilt fan and everybody in the SEC has to tip your cap and just say, pretty good job. And, oh, by the way, the largest investment in the history of the school, even though all the professors and the law professors and the doctors and all the people don't want them to spend the money, the largest investment in football in the history of the school, along with a 7-7 record over 14 games, I can make the case it's a pretty good situation for Vanderbilt right now. So there you go.
They just need to figure out NIL, and I realize they'll never compete with the elite of the elite with NIL, but it's my understanding they're just basically not interested. Now, maybe that's just because they can't get the funds going for it, but that's got
lots of money. So their biggest boosters have billions of dollars with a B. Like John Ingram's one of the largest boosters, owns Ingram Barge, Ingram Press, Ingram Printing. He owns the Nashville SC Soccer Club. Like, this is a billionaire with a capital B. They have a $4 billion endowment. They can pay for it. Kentucky's having this problem too. Like, Kentucky and Mitch Barnhart haven't exactly embraced the NIL thing as best they should. So I just want to point out, again, just stepping back from Vanderbilt, 7-7 over 14 games. in year 2 and beginning of year 3 for Clark Lee after a 22 consecutive game SEC losing. I think that's major progress, and I think it's okay to say so. So.
I tell you what, Florida, they take it with Billy Napier.
They probably would.
That would mean a win over Utah. You know what?
How about Missouri's quarterback situation? I guess Brady Cook is the starter, or is it Sam Horn? I mean, who's it going to be at the end of this game against? By the way, Thursday night against the Jackrabbits of South Dakota State.
Yeah, I don't think we'll really know based on this one, but I am curious to see both those guys, particularly Sam Horn, just because we've not seen him play. He certainly seems to be the fan favorite because we all love the quarterback we've not actually seen, and we assume he's great. He's going to Heisman. You know, he was an elite prospect. I'm not talking down to him, but I know he could have went to Tennessee. That gives you an indication of how highly Josh Heupel thought of Sam Horn. So very curious to see him. Want to see the defense. This should be a shutout type game, at least for the first string. Curious to see that. I want to see these receivers. I'll be happy to see Luther Burden take that next step in year 2. That's something that I'm going to be looking for. But really, I want to see a running back emerge because I don't know if we have a really good running back at Missouri, and I think that's kind of dictated why the offense struggled last year. And I know everybody looks at quarterback, but the first 2 years – they had some really good running backs. Tyler Beatty's really good, yeah. Tyler Beatty and I can't think of the dude's name off the top of my head.
They've had decent
Larry Roundtree.
Yeah, Larry Roundtree. They have sneaky decent running back and defensive line history. Like if you look like front 7, 2 linebackers, Nick Bolton is doing his thing right now for the Chiefs. Like they've had some sneaky good positions of success in the SEC since coming here, and running back has been a pretty good spot. So you're right. Like support whoever it is playing quarterback with some ground game. And of course, Kirby Moore's influence as the new offensive coordinator. Eli Drinkwitz finally stepping away from that. Again, just you want to see pure domination in these games. Like Ole Miss, same thing with Ole Miss against Mercer and Georgia against UT Martin. Like they're not competitive football games, but you want to see Carson Beck be in control. You want to see Jackson Dart be accurate. You want to see KJ Jefferson not get hurt against Western Carolina. Like, just slide, dude. Just slide. I want to watch KJ Jefferson for 12 games and see what he can do. So a lot of those types of games where there's no point spread and there's no gambling, it's just sort of like just handle your business, go out there, work up a sweat, dominate the line of scrimmage, put up some points, and get out of there without an injury. I think that's what you're hoping for if you're, and then, again, let Carson Beck,
KJ locks up the Heisman after week 1.
7 touchdowns? Against Western Carolina, thrust Western into Carolina. The Heisman conversation.
Just like this other guy Chris was saying. No, I want to see the defense for Arkansas, though. I mean,
that's true. That's true.
Again, who knows what we'll learn against Western Carolina, but we just can't be as awful as we were. But build some confidence against an opponent of this caliber before the schedule stiffens up a little bit. I know it's always a little wonky playing in Little Rock, but and they've moved the kickoff time. I know fans are upset about that, but. I know what we have in KJ. I know what we have in Rocket. I'm going to be more curious about the defense.
Yeah, find some guys, find some alphas on the defensive side of the ball for sure. With that new very aggressive Travis Williams defense, we should see what goes on that side of the ball for sure. All right, do we want to do like the start of each episode starting next week, like the airing of grievances? Because it feels like I'm taking Florida State, you've got LSU, I'm taking Utah. Because I hate the SEC apparently, and you're taking Florida outright to win, correct?
Oh yeah.
Okay, so we have to start next week's show with the airing of grievances, and if you're right, I'll stand up and apologize. If I'm right, I need you to apologize. That's all.
I don't know if I'll apologize. I think I'll blame Napier for screwing it up.
Okay, for you're gonna blame Billy Napier for what came out of your mouth.
For letting me down, for disappointing the audience,
okay.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, disappointing.
Hey, we didn't hit about, or maybe you did and I forgot it, but Mercer, Ole Miss. What the hell? I was told last week that Jackson Dart was going to be the starting quarterback, and now maybe he still is, I don't know, but why the hell against Mercer are we keeping it this tight-lipped down there? And I mean,
do you think Lane Kiffin is just trolling Nick Saban?
I mean, I had not even thought of that, but perhaps. I mean, that makes more sense than anything else.
I wouldn't put it past him.
I mean, it's Mercer, for God's sake. Who cares? Just name a starting quarterback, and we know they'll probably play 3 or 4 quarterbacks in this game.
Right. I'm more interested in like Walker Howard, honestly, than I am in Jackson Dart. Like if Walker Howard actually sees some time.
Start him, and just to throw everybody off,
Well, it's what he did last year. He played Luke Altmaier first. He was like, no, this was the plan. We're going to play both of them in 2 separate games. That was always the plan. I want to see Dart. Dart, I think, is the guy. I think I want to, but he needs to be accurate because the offense is based on angles and timing and accuracy. And so, Judkins is this amazing weapon that will dictate so much space on the defense. Wherever Judkins is and whatever he is doing, it's going to influence every other player, and that's where Dart has to then be good off of that on the play action. And it's all about angles. Matt Corral was great at angles and geometry and timing. And if Dart can do that, this offense could be very dangerous and they could win a lot of games this year. So we'll see. But again, defense as well with Pete Golding, see what they look like on that side. So
do you have any thoughts on Texas playing Rice, Oklahoma playing Arkansas State? Because I'm going to be watching all those games to kind of get to learn those teams. And anything from those stand out?
So JT Daniels starting for Rice.
He's still in college.
Former USC, former Georgia, former West Virginia quarterback JT Daniels starting for Rice, who also has a national championship ring. Just want to put that out there.
He does, doesn't he?
And oh, by the way, Texas could play not 1, not 2, but 3 quarterbacks, because the Malik Murphy kid, who's also getting a ton of hype out of camp, Arch Manning. Here's the scenario. We were joking about Petrino and the offense with Max Johnson coming off the field. What happens if like they're up 21-0 and Arch gets to the debut and then Arch goes for like 4 straight touchdowns? You don't think the entitled boosters in Texas are going to lose their shit over Arch Manning? It's going to be great. Arkansas State sucks, so go Oklahoma.
Yeah, I'm just kind of curious because, I'm sure this time next week we're going to be talking a lot of Alabama, Texas. So I'll have a keen eye on that Texas game.
I think the defensive line, like the whole story around Austin, is that they've eliminated the entitlement this year, that the coaching staff has done a job to eliminate the entitlement. And if that's actually happening, then you'll see them dominate on defense. You'll see the weapons on the offensive line, which is very similar to LSU, right? They played a bunch of young players on the offensive line last year. Now they're all back this year. Quinn Ewers, Xavier Worthy, like they've got dudes, man, and Sark knows how to coach on offense at least. So I want to see kind of like Tennessee. It's like Kentucky, excuse me. I want to see them like put somebody away early and stand on their neck. You know what I mean? Like it's freaking Rice here. I know national championship quarterback JT Daniels is on the other side, and his weird hair.
Does he still have the stash?
I don't know, but he's just got such a weird face. I don't understand. I'm sorry, JT Daniels. I apologize, but Oklahoma, the story out of camp is the offense looks elite, like Lincoln Riley good. I doubt it, but Dylan Gabriel's a very good player, so keep an eye on him. And the biggest question about Oklahoma is their defensive line. Like their defensive line will keep them from winning the conference this year unless they are very, very good. All right, motivated, dedicated. All caps. That's how you know he's serious. Virginia beats Tennessee.
Sounds like a hater to me.
I feel like I'm taking crazy pills. All right. Do you have any? Are you gambling? Are you a gambler? Are you gambling this weekend? Who you got?
Yeah. I already told you Florida outright, right?
I like that.
And LSU outright. I mean, they're the favorite though, so I don't know if that counts.
2.5 points. 2.5 points there.
Those are pretty much the only ones that I'm. I think I may lean UMass in the points. I may lean Virginia in the points. That's all I've got right now.
Okay, I got Tennessee minus the 28 with actual real money. I've got the receipt if you need it. So I've got Tennessee minus the 28. If the number goes down for Utah to like 5, I would stay away from it. If it goes back up to 8 or 9 and it starts to rise again, that's maybe when you want to take a flyer on Florida and jump on those points. If the number gets to 3 for LSU, I would stay away from it. Otherwise, I would take Florida State in the 3 at that point. Same with South Carolina. If it gets to +3, take the 3 points for sure. Because right now, sent again 2.5. So we shall see. Otherwise, I think that just about does it. Erin is in Ireland.
She at the Navy game?
She was at the Navy. She was shooting. She was shooting the Navy game.
Okay.
Sam Hartman of former Wake Forest fame, who beat Florida State, who's going to beat LSU. So there you have it. That's how it all comes. That's how it all comes full circle. So, all right, Mike, you can get to him on Twitter, of course. SEC Mike. You got that SEC podcast. The podcast feed, of course, is SEC Football Live. So check that out. We do appreciate all you guys in the comments. You guys absolutely great this week. I just thank God it's here, man. It's Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday night. Do you want me to do something? I could do this each show and tell you like the random game to watch outside of the SEC because they're going to be coaches. That are going to be, or there's reasons. Houston and UTSA this weekend. Pick'em game. It was a great game last year, and it's the best quarterback on paper right now that Tennessee is going to face the entire season. Frank Harris, the quarterback at UTSA. They're going to play after the Florida game in Knoxville. Just keep an eye on UTSA this weekend. So if you want to do some future scouting, make sure you check out UTSA and Houston this weekend. Should be interesting.
I can't wait for Tennessee to hang 60 on them.
I didn't say they were going to stop them. I said it was on paper the best quarterback they might play because right now we don't know who half these quarterbacks are at Alabama. And
better than Leary?
I would have the number 1 and number 2 quarterbacks on Tennessee's schedule would be Frank Harris and Devin Leary. Those would be number 1 and number 2. Just keep an eye on UT. Just do some future scouting.
Wickman?
Yes, that's true. He's going to be in the Heisman conversation after week 1. I forgot about that. All right. Thank you guys for listening, man. Appreciate you guys. Enjoy week 1. If you're walking around Nissan Stadium, shoot me a tweet at Braden Gall. We'll come find you. I'll buy you a beer. How about that? On me. No questions asked. You get a beer. You mentioned the show. You get a beer on me. No questions asked. So, all right. Nice. For Mike, I'm Braden. Thanks for hanging out. Rate, review, subscribe. We do appreciate you guys. Enjoy week 1. We'll talk to you next week.